Have you ever wondered what could lead someone to make such controversial and shocking choices as Lot's daughters did? The Bible is full of stories that make us reflect, but this one, in particular, raises questions that seem to contradict the moral logic we know. In a world devastated by the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, what could possibly justify such an extreme decision? Lot's dilemma teaches us a lot about the dangers of following our immediate desires instead of holding on to faith. Imagine yourself in that situation, a place full of material opportunities where success seems guaranteed. Lot chose to live near Sodom, attracted by what the city had to offer. But what he found was a moral trap. The city was steeped in corruption, and Lot had to fight to maintain his spiritual integrity amidst many temptations. How often in life do we make similar choices, driven by what seems advantageous at the moment, without thinking about the long-term consequences? This story is a clear example of how seemingly small decisions can divert us from our true mission. When Lot separated from Abraham and chose the fertile lands, he wasn't just choosing a piece of land, but also a lifestyle. How often are we seduced by something that shines but hides a high price? The struggle between the material and the spiritual is something we face every day, whether in work, relationships, or financial decisions. And here comes the question we should be asking ourselves. What are we prioritizing? As we follow Lot's story, we see that his choices put him in extreme situations. He had to protect his family, remain faithful to God, and at the same time live in a society in complete decay. It's a mirror of our current lives, where we are often surrounded by negative influences and need to make choices that preserve our integrity. When you find yourself in a similar situation, think, what would Lot have done if he could redo his choices? Lot's journey begins as a promising adventure alongside his uncle Abraham, leaving Ur in search of a new home. However, as the story progresses, we realize that Lot's choices reflect a pursuit of material gain above all else. He saw the fertile lands near Sodom and, without hesitation, decided to settle there. It's easy to relate to this situation, as many times when faced with financial or career decisions, we prioritize what seems most profitable without considering the long-term impacts. But is this relentless pursuit of prosperity leading us down the right path? Throughout his journey, Lot seemed increasingly drawn to the promises of wealth and stability. The region of Sodom offered abundance, but was also deeply rooted in corruption. This choice reflects a very common dilemma in our lives. When we are faced with something that promises immediate success but requires moral compromises, how often do we set aside our values for a tempting opportunity? Lot's story makes us reflect on what truly matters in our lives. Are we focusing on the right things? By choosing to live near Sodom, Lot became immersed in a decadent society. He sought prosperity, but encountered challenges that would test his faith and integrity. Similarly, we are constantly challenged to choose between what seems easier and what truly brings us closer to our values and faith. What would you do if you had to choose between a path that seems promising but might take you away from what really matters? Lot teaches us that the most fertile path isn't always the safest. When the destruction of Sodom was imminent, God sent angels to rescue Lot and his family. This divine intervention highlights how, even in the midst of chaos, a protective hand guides those who remain faithful. It's interesting to realize that, despite all the questionable choices Lot made, he was still considered worthy of being saved. This makes us reflect on how divine mercy works, even when we make wrong decisions. After all, how many times have we been rescued from difficult situations without even realizing it? However, Lot's act of offering his daughters to protect the visitors deeply shocks us. This action gives us a clear view of the moral corruption of that time. Lot was so desperate to protect the angels that he acted in a way that would be unthinkable today. This leads us to question how much pressure from circumstances can make us lose our sense of morality. In moments of crisis, do we act according to our values, or do we let desperation guide us? The presence of angels at this crucial moment also symbolizes the power of divine intervention in our lives. Many times when we are surrounded by darkness, a light appears to guide us. This light can come in the form of a friend, advice, or even an unexpected opportunity. But it's important that we stay alert to recognize these interventions. Lot was rescued, but his story warns us of the importance of making decisions aligned with our values so that we don't need to be constantly saved from our own mistakes. The destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah is one of the strongest passages about how human depravity can drive a society away from divine protection. The fire that fell upon these cities was not just a punishment, but a testament to how far the people had lost their sense of morality. It serves as a reminder that when a society fully gives itself over to corruption, the consequences can be devastating. In the same way, today, we see many examples of societies suffering from a lack of integrity and ethics. Are we paying attention to the consequences of our collective choices? The story of Lot's wife became a powerful symbol of disobedience. When she looked back against God's instructions, she was turned into a pillar of salt. That glance back reflects more than curiosity. It signifies a connection to the corrupt past of Sodom. How many times, even knowing we should move forward, do we hesitate and look back, clinging to what has already passed? This story teaches us that to walk toward the future, we must leave the past behind without regrets. Want to dive deeper into topics like this? Check out our exclusive ebook in the comments. It offers detailed analysis and spiritual reflections that complement this video. The image of Lot's wife turning into salt also carries strong symbolism, the weight of disobedience. Often, the consequences of our mistakes do not come immediately, but when they do, they can be irreversible. This makes us reflect on how we follow the guidance we receive, whether spiritual or in life. How many times do we ignore clear signs, believing that we can deal with the consequences later? The truth is, there isn't always a second chance, as Lot's story clearly shows us. After the devastation of Sodom and Gomorrah, Lot and his daughters sought refuge in a cave, isolated from the rest of the world. This isolation wasn't just physical, but also emotional and spiritual. They had lost everything and were gripped by fear of the future. Their situation is an extreme example of what can happen when circumstances force someone to live on the edge of survival. In such situations, decisions can be driven by desperation, and this is when deep moral dilemmas arise. How many times, in moments of crisis, do we make choices we never thought we would? Lot's daughters' plan to ensure the continuation of their family line is one of the most controversial parts of the story. The fear of having no descendants led them to take an action that, under normal circumstances, would have been unthinkable. However, this event gave rise to two nations, the Moabites and the Ammonites. This morally complex legacy reflects how our actions, even if driven by desperation or necessity, can have lasting consequences. What may seem like a solution today could complicate things even more tomorrow. Lot's final struggle was, in a way, a battle against the consequences of his own choices. He found himself in a position where his previous decisions directly affected the future of his family and, by extension, two entire nations. This story makes us think about the impact our actions have, not only on our own lives but also on future generations. Reflecting on this, we are led to ponder: what legacy are we leaving? How are our decisions today shaping the future of those around us? After reflecting on the incredible complexity of Lot and his daughter's choices, it's impossible not to ask, how are our own decisions shaping the future? Are we allowing desperation to push us down paths we never imagined we would take? Or are we truly trusting in God's greater plans, even when everything seems to be falling apart? Lot's story is a powerful reminder that, no matter how difficult the circumstances, the choices we make today have lasting consequences. So, how will you apply this knowledge in your life? How about starting to pay more attention to the small signs around you, the ones we often ignore? If this content made you reflect, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to continue diving into stories and teachings that can transform your journey.